And I will tell you just a little bit about how I got here. In 1977 or 1978, I went away to college, and I was questioning my faith and had been studying world religions, investigating Eastern thought and other things. And I ended up eating in a special cafeteria because I was vegetarian at the time. And in 1978, there were very few vegetarians in Ames, Iowa, where I went to school at Iowa State. And so they put all the people that were like, had diabetic needs, or, other, maybe they had a problem with gluten or something, and the Muslims, and the conservative Jewish individuals and the Hindus all ate down in the special cafeteria. And we would ask each other, what are you in for? Like we were in jail. Because it was very jail-like. It was down the basement, no windows, and real sketchy. But they asked, we always talked about the things you're not supposed to talk about at dinner, like politics and religion and things. And I, asked about different people's faith. And they asked me, what do I believe? And I said, well, I think there's one God, and it seems like there have been messengers, and they all seem to say the same thing: love each other and be good to each other and worship God. And I said, so that's what I believe. And they shrugged and they said, oh, she's Muslim. I had never heard the word, and I responded with these ill-fated phrase, are you the ones that worship cows? What? No, I went to Bettendorf High School. We skipped that chapter in social studies. I had no idea. Literally no idea. And so we had conversations about Islam. I read some books. I studied the Quran, and then decided that this really matched, at the time, my thoughts about faith. So fast forward 35 years, and here I am. That's how we got here. I'm honored to be the first woman, the first convert, and the first non-immigrant to be the leader of a mosque here in the Quad Cities, and as far as I know, there's not another one in the nation. So I'm uniquely situated to be able to chat with you today. That doesn't mean I have any special qualifications, it just means that I'm a little bit weird. But we'll talk. I was charged with talking a little bit about Muslim practices, and so we'll do that and as quickly as possible. Then we'll have time for questions, and you're welcome to ask me anything. I don't think anything would shock me. I have 4 grown children. Incoming. I have 4 grown children. They've asked me everything, and so I think that we'll be all right. Maybe if you've gotten to speak to, is it Pastor Larry, you said? He may have talked to you about the 5 pillars, the 5 main practices in Islam. These are the bare minimum practices to be a practicing Muslim. Now, do all Muslims do all these? There's some that don't. It's all right. I'm sure there's a range in Christianity of practicing levels as well. But most Muslims who consider themselves observant Muslims or practicing Muslims believe in first of all, to be Muslim, you have to believe in one God. Just believe in one God and believe that all the messengers, like Adam, David, Joshua, Noah, Abraham, Jesus, and we believe Muhammad, are all messengers and are equivalent in God's eyes. So we have that belief in God and the prophets. And you'll have more discussion about this next week, which, by the way, you're not going to get any other girls. You're going to get me, and then you're going to get the imam of the leader of the Moline Mosque, and then you get the professor of Islamic Studies at Augustana. But they're both boys. So if you have any girl questions, ask me. And then prayer is the next of our 5 pillars. We pray 5 times a day. Yep, we really do. 5 times a day. Fasting, we fast 30 days in a month called Ramadan. Charity, we give charity every year. It's called zakat. And then Hajj, we try to, if we can afford and can swing it, we try to go to a pilgrimage to Mecca. And that's not required for everybody, only for those who can afford. So let's start with belief in God. Because you hear a Muslim saying the word Allah, and you get the impression this is a different God, don't you? I mean, I would get the impression that it's somebody else. But the Muslims believe in just the same God that created the world. There's only one. It's not a different God. It's the one God that created the world and everything in it and all of us. And the word Allah, though, is simply the word in Arabic for God. Doesn't mean any different, special thing. It just means the word for God. And interestingly, Arabic is a very rich language, and Islam came to a place where was revealed in a place where people spoke Arabic, so there's some traditions that keep to that language. But the word Allah is unique. All words in Arabic have a male and a female, and almost all words can be plural in some way. Even, verbs, you say two people are walking, they use a different verb than one person walking. So it's the one word that can't be made plural, and it doesn't have a gender. So it encompasses the everythingness of God. And that's why some Muslims prefer to use the word Allah. Maybe when the imam or the leader comes in and talks, he may keep referring to God as Allah, and I don't want you to feel like it's a different thing. I tend to use the word God because I think it divides us, because we've had a lot of visceral experiences with news and with articles that mention the word Allah and Muslims in not such a favorable way. So I prefer, when I'm speaking, to use the word God. I was raised with the word God. It's English, it's my language, so I recognize that I'm speaking of a God that's not male or female and is not plural. It's one. There's no little g God in Islam at all.
A question.
Yes.
Other people recognize God, some pluralistic. How does the Arabic language treat those guys?
Right, but that's a very good question. In fact, I was going to put it, but I didn't want to make the slide too crowded. And I'm sorry to have my back to you.
But hey, that's my problem.
If you want to
I
switch
can move over.
All right, it's up to you. When there are false gods or idols that people worship to, because people have created literally physical images that they pray to, we call those idols. Or we might call them, yeah.
But,
we don't use the little g.
For instance, the God of Hinduism or other pluralistic gods today.
Right.
In English, we can say gods, little g.
Right.
How would the Islamic, the Arabic
Well, it's
handle that?
yeah, it's so interesting to me because I used to refer to those Hindu gods as gods, little g. But the Hindus themselves in their community call them their idols. They had a big debate in the Quad City Hindu community which idols they were going to have in their temple to worship. And so they have no problem with the word idols, and so we continue that word, the word that they use, idols. Which idols will we have? Because they recognize they're just representations of the characteristics of the one and only God. If you talk to Hindus, you'll find out that they too have a belief in one God. Interestingly, because I always thought of them as polytheists, because they, worship different idols. Yes?
This has changed the subject. Prayer 5 times a day.
Yes.
We only see the men praying. What do the women do?
We do the same. We do the
Not
same.
in public.
No, we do. In our mosque, it's one
I've
room.
never seen a woman in all these pictures.
Yeah.
It's always with the men.
Oh, I wish I
So
would have
it's
downloaded a
like
picture.
minor, And they're major.
No, not at all.
Would you repeat the question?
She said in pictures that she sees of the prayer, she sees only men praying. She asked what the women do, and I was saying we do the same thing, and often in the same room. Some mosques, out of shyness or cultural issue, they may have a separate room or a balcony or even maybe a little curtain dividing. So the women, if they're breastfeeding or if they're this or that, or if they're from a culture where they were not intermingling a lot with men, that they can pray relaxed in an environment where there's only women. But they do the same prayers. I lead women's prayers, and sometimes in our mosque we have one room where everybody prays together. So, but many photographers, out of respect for the women's modesty, they may not take pictures, but they may not have been given permission to take pictures of the women, because the women may be shyer about being imaged and photographed and then displayed everywhere. So,
Can you pray at home, or do you have to be in the...
no, we can pray anywhere.
Yeah.
You can pray at home, you can pray at a mosque or a temple. When I go to interfaith things, I might...
Are they just specified times?
Do you use the same posture that the men do, or can you just
Nope,
say prayers to yourself and accomplish the same thing?
Let's get to that. Let's see, there's some slides that will talk a little bit about that, so we'll go forward.
And I'd like to interject one thing. When you're talking about Allah, Christians in that area, the word they use for God, because they speak Allah.
Oh, there's your friend. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me that. If you read a Bible and you were Egyptian Christian, it would say, Allahu khalaq as-samawati wal ard. God created the heavens and earth. It would use the word Allah, and it wouldn't be like a political statement or anything. It would be because that's the word God.
It is.
So it isn't a thing.
God.
It isn't a thing, but we make it a thing because we've had so many visceral exposures to this word in a negative context that we think of it as different. Oh, that's what those brown people worship. It's a different, fake God. And I've literally had somebody come to an organization and say, we're having this interfaith prayer, we're having the day of prayer breakfast or something, but we're not, this is a day of prayer for Christians. This is not a prayer for false gods like Allah or Buddha or this or that. And I was like, okay. So it was really told to us that we were not welcome there. And that's such an interesting phenomenon to me, but and a hurtful one, I would say. And because of that, actually, Rabbi Karp got together a group and said, we're going to have a prayer breakfast that everybody can come to, all of y'all. So that was a great thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, when you talk about the neutral gender of the term Allah, it's interesting because in many Christian disciplines, they have a little bit of difficulty not calling God He.
Oh, tell me about it. We have a similar thing because in many languages, in fact, I would venture to say most languages that are written languages, when they use the term he, it's inclusive of he and she. So sometimes even translations, when you see God referred to, they say he because that's inclusive. But to me, that doesn't feel inclusive
No, it doesn't.
as a woman. But the Quran in many places says, this is a verse for believing women and believing men, or women and men should do this, and you all should do this, or it'll use the word humankind. So that's, I think, a great thing. But there are verses specifically directed towards men and specifically directed towards women. But when they want to include both, they use different terminology. It's a very rich language. Yes.
I'm just going to say we get together for a discussion group on Mondays, and we were talking about this issue, and Pastor Larry was referring to a biblical text, and he said, now, in the original Greek, this term was a neutral gender. But when it was translated, it was felt that wouldn't sell as well as being a masculine gender.
Let me guess, would those translators have been, I don't know, a man? Perhaps. This is how it happens. That's how it happens. But yes, so this is really, really an important thing for all of us to become educated about these. And then think in terms of more neutral language. I'm a big fan. You may not hear that because you may hear some old school men who grew up referring to everything as he. You'll hear them next week and the week after, but I'm sensitive about this and I'm bringing a different flavor to the mosque. Our prayer. Our first one is at first light. First light nowadays is about 5:30 in the morning and it goes till 6:45. When the sun comes up, peaks above the horizon, that's the end of our morning prayer time. In the summer, it's like 3:40 till 5. So it's an earlier prayer time. There's good things and bad things about the long days and the short days, right? So sometimes it's hard to get up because then we would like to go back to sleep. Some people have that skill and some people don't. So some people are up for long days in the summer and they're staying up for long nights because our last prayer is about an hour and something after sunset. So in the summer, that's 10:30 is our last prayer. So we're up late, we're up early in the summer. In the winter, we're not up quite so early, but we pray that first one before dawn. And we consider a very, very important prayer, a prayer that we're asked to guard and really work at getting up. And I'll tell you, getting up early and being ready to go is not difficult for me because for 35 years, I've not missed more than maybe 10 times that dawn prayer. So I'm used to getting up in the morning and getting ready and getting work done. So that's a great thing. I think it's a great skill that it gives people. We have a prayer that's just after high noon, a prayer in the afternoon, a prayer at sunset, and then a prayer in the night. And these are formal structured prayers where we use the postures that you may have seen. And I don't know, first time I'm doing anything on a Mac, we're not going to have pictures, I don't think. It seems like every time I put, these pictures, I worked so hard to get the best pictures, but Macs are funny things. So we pray bowing, we pray kneeling, sitting down all the way, and we pray prostrating with our head to the ground. You may have seen these postures in pictures, and I wish so much, because I had the most adorable child picture of a little boy not prostrating while all of the other people around him were prostrating. It was really, really a good picture. But if all you just do is type in Google, adorable boy, Muslim boy praying or something, you'll get it. You'll get some great pictures. Anyway, we continue the tradition that the Old Testament says, thou shalt worship your Lord, bowing, kneeling, and prostrating. So we include all those postures in our prayer, and we stick to that to this day. And I know that the remnants of that are seen in your masses where you kneel on a kneeler, and you sit, and you spend different time in different postures, and there's sometimes that you stand. We too have a part where we stand. We too have a part where we bow deeply. We do have the time where we kneel down all the way on the ground, and we do have the time when we prostrate. Prostration is, to me, the best and most meaningful part of the prayer, because it's the most humble position you can possibly be in. It's taking all of your five senses, the good stuff that's up here, and it's putting them subservient to your spiritual self. So it's really an interesting, and it's putting your face back on the ground where you came from. So there's whole books written about just the importance of prostration, and we have a saying that there's every problem in the world, the distance between you and solving every problem in the world is the distance between your forehead and the ground. It means prayer. So we really value our prayer. And I had a friend say to me, gosh, just being a regular run-of-the-mill Muslim is like being a monk in some other faith, because who does that? Who prays 5 times a day? I mean, the sisters, my friends as Catholic nuns in the monastery, pray 5 times a day. And I know the monks up in, what is the place where they make caramels and coffins?
New Mallory?
Yes, New Mallory, which I've gone and eaten lunch with the monks. I accidentally tried to talk to one who had a vow of silence, but I didn't know. And so he just smiled, and I was very kind of ignorant Muslims coming here and talking at us when we're eating. But anyway, they pray 5 times a day, and they come in the morning and they come in the night, and they do their Beatitudes, and it's a beautiful thing. But those 5 sort of pegs in our day that bring us back and recenter us and let us detach ourselves from this world and to reconnect with God. And remember why we're here is a really important thing to Muslims. So we hold that as maybe the most important pillar aside from the belief in one God.
I've always been kind of surprised, well, not surprised because I know, but when I'm in Egypt, I always see farmers out in the middle of their fields, at 1:30, they're down right in the dirt, prostrating themselves. There's not another soul around, maybe a camel or a donkey, but otherwise, there they are.
It's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It is
I
kind of a
have
beautiful thing.
observed similar things at O'Hare Airport.
Yes.
Very, very crowded, and off in the corner with the prayer mat, there's a Muslim praying.
And I'll tell you, it's, if we feel that there's risk to us in praying the way that we pray with our head on the ground, or if we're sick, or if we have bad knees, or, the elderly, they don't have to pray all those positions. But it's desirable to do so as long in your life as you can, in the situations where you can. But in O'Hare Airport, if there's not a chapel I can go to privately and pray, I pray in my chair, just bowing my head, because I know people who have been taken away and taken to a room and missed their flights and were detained because somebody said, I'm not comfortable flying with these people who are obviously Muslim. And so I tend to not make a show of it and tend to be very quiet. In fact, when I travel, I've taken to the habit, sadly, it's the world we live in, of taking off my scarf and maybe wearing something else, maybe wearing a cap. What it means though is, or a different kind of scarf that doesn't show that I'm Muslim very much. I mean, you see I'm wearing it in a little bit, not like maybe the traditional way you've seen Muslim women wear. I have been run off the road, I've been, cursed out, I've been called names, and so most positive experiences, but I don't think that there's a need to go to excess. And so I tend to, when I travel in a car by myself, I wear a baseball cap, because I don't want to be the next person that's the victim of a hate crime. And that's too bad.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
You stirred an interesting question in this discussion. How do Muslims such as yourself, their perspective on ISIS and Al-Qaeda, how we've had renegade Christians like the KKK, and we have not dealt with them. How do you perceive as a culture that Islam should itself be dealing with these issues?
We have a saying that if you see a wrong, you have to try to stop it. And if you can't stop it physically, you should speak out against it. And if you can't speak out against it, you should write against it. And if you can't write against it in your heart, you should definitely be strongly opposed to it. And that's what we are doing. We're speaking. I don't know that we can physically stop. There are many Muslims, by the way, armies and Muslim fighters that go to try to fight against ISIS, and oftentimes then they end up themselves passing away. And then there's the people that speak like me, there's people that write letters to the editor and to try to educate, and then there's other people that at least, I don't know any Muslim, none, and I've never heard in 35 years any Muslim ever support an act of violence in any way, shape, or form. Speak of it, insinuate it in any way, no, not one. And I've met probably 100,000 Muslims. I've been to many, many mosques. I've never heard anyone even insinuate that violence is something we should get engaged in, do, or even condone. Never. So I mean, thank you for your question. We have to get that out on the table. We fast. We fast like it says in the Bible. Jesus fasted. All of the prophets fasted. Moses, I think, went away and fasted, and there have been always fasting. And Ramadan is our 9th month of the lunar calendar, which is the Islamic calendar. It gets 10 days earlier each year. The Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, but they build in a correction so that they kind of stick to this calendar that we use here in the United States. But Muslims leave the calendar as it is, so that Ramadan floats around the calendar, and it takes about 33 or 35 years for it to get to be the same time of year. My first year as a Muslim, my first day as a Muslim was the first day of Ramadan, 1979. And that was July. So we got up couldn't eat or drink after 3 something in the morning, and we couldn't eat again or drink anything until 9:15. Bad timing on my part. But now this year again, Ramadan is at the solstice. So this was our longest Ramadan we just had. The longest Ramadan that will be for another 35 years. It was a long fast this year. We don't eat or drink anything, including water, from sunup to sundown. But people say, I think you should drink water. That's not good. My mom says it to me every time, my Episcopalian mother who raised me. I don't like this fasting. You're already too thin. So that's what a mother should say. And I take it in the spirit in which it was intended. But she said you should at least have water. Well, it's interesting that if you're fasting and you have water, you lower your blood sugar even further, and then you end up in a lot more physical ill. If you limit both food and water together, as was always the tradition in fasting in the Old Testament, the Jewish individuals are coming up, I believe, next week having Yom Kippur, the day of the 24-hour fast. They will not be eating or drinking anything. So that's the kind of fasting that's traditional. And there's a great deal of health benefits. There's volumes and journals dedicated to the benefits of this type of fasting. And now we know with science today that people that do intermittent fasting have longer lives and have healthier lives. And so there is benefit in it. And I always say to my mom, I've been doing this 35 years, Mom. I appreciate your concern, but I've been doing it 35 years, and I've never even gotten sick slightly during this fast, because whatever, if I go into it with a sore throat or I'm starting to get sick, as soon as I start fasting, it just kicks it in the rear. And it really is curative in many ways. And so I don't know many people who've been fasting. But if you are sick, or if you need medication,
That's what I was just
you
gonna
don't
ask.
fast. You can't do a fast that will hurt your body.
Or if you're diabetic.
If you're diabetic, you don't fast, unless you can, unless you can switch your days and nights and, make that be the time that you rest and sleep and things like that. But, so pregnant women don't have to fast, nursing women don't have to fast, some of them do, and I want to just smack them. They just don't realize. We have this exemption, and then they won't take it because they enjoy the fast. But anything that would be harmful to you or your baby, you can't do. Of course, the purpose of the fast is not to harm you, it's to help you develop empathy for those who are hungry, for those who know thirst, and also to learn truly self-restraint. Because those are real basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs things. Eating and drinking water are very, very important things. And those are, if you can say no to those things that are absolutely necessary for you to live, food and water, it's easy to say no to drugs. It's easy to say no to sex outside of marriage. Easy to say no to the things that aren't necessary. So we develop a great deal of self-restraint if we're doing it right. If we're really eating, being humble, if we're keeping our prayers. We have a little meal in the morning before we say our morning prayers. So before first light, in the dark of night, we'll be up with all of the kids eating at the breakfast table. When does that happen in today's life, right? And at the time of breaking fast, you can bet that all families will be together. And sometimes all families come together at the mosque and pray and get together and eat, break fast with everybody. So it's an incredibly close time. It's my favorite month, even though it's very hard, it's my favorite month because you get so close with people. And extra prayers. I put it at the very bottom of the slide because I wanted to remind myself. We come together every night during Ramadan for 30 nights to the mosque. This year, it was at 10 o'clock. Should have been in bed, but no, I was at the mosque every night at 10 o'clock, and we read a 30th of the Quran in our prayers. So a little section of it, then we bow and kneel and prostrate, then we stand, and another section is read, and then we do that. We do cycles of that, usually 20 or 40 or so of these cycles of up and down while we're reading the Quran, and then it ends up being that we finish the whole Quran in that month, which is kind of cool. We really love that time, and you're praying just right next to people, and you get very close with your community that time, because our prayer is very intimate, very physically close. So that's kind of a cool thing.
A moment.
Yeah.
I have heard that Muslims believe the Quran is only the Quran in Arabic. Do you read it Arabic? English translation? A little bit more on that.
I became Muslim.
It's sort of foreign to us.
Right, I became Muslim after reading a translation. Of course, people read the translations in their own language, but we're encouraged to try to learn some Arabic, just like Jewish people have Hebrew school. We have school where we learn to try to learn some basic Arabic. So if you go to a mosque in China or Africa or England or here or Australia, the prayers will be done in Arabic. So all Muslims who are observant have some phrases and some verses that we know in Arabic. And I brought, if anybody wants, I have the words in English of our prayers so that you kind of know what's being said when we're doing the different postures in our prayer. Since that's a ritual prayer and it's the same, I thought that might be interesting to you. But no, the 5 daily prayers aren't it. Those are just the ritual prayers that we all do. But you can pray anytime, anywhere, in any posture, in any way. Supplicate to God and ask for whatever. That's a different thing than that structured prayer that we do. So thank you. But we try to learn some Arabic so that we can understand a little bit better the richness of the words. Because frankly, I've read many translations and I was going, whoa, wait a minute. That is clearly not a good translation. Because I know, now, pictures you're going to miss. And so the sad thing is, I wanted to talk too about, I think I might have I've missed, let me just see, I'm gonna go back. Zakat?
Yeah.
Yes. Zakat, we give charity, alms, giving alms to the poor is one of our 5 pillars, just like I think in Christianity, you also are encouraged to give charity. We have a lot more, by the way, in common than different. We give 2.5% of any excess savings that we've not used for a year. So if we have something like, if we have a house